evening is the March 23rd, 2016 Sustainability Board meeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out tonight. This is the March 23rd, 2016 meeting of the Satellite Beach Sustainability Board. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first part of these meetings is public comment, and this is for public comment on non-agenda items. So if you have comments to make that have to do with Mr. Dupree's presentation, that's our first agenda item tonight. So if you have comments on anything that are not part of the agenda already, this is the time for that, and you come to the podium and introduce yourself. Okay, being none, come back to the board, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Dupree's. And I'd like to, since we have so many members of the public and everything here tonight, I'd like to kind of go away from the way we normally take questions and everything and just let you take questions from the, if that's okay with you.
You need me on a, oh, I'm right. God, you scared me. Good evening, everybody. I know we've got to, you guys want to sit down, or are you good? What I'm going to do tonight is actually kind of move through a PowerPoint as we need to. I was just at Florida Tech. You know, you can imagine we've all been running around very dramatically over the last week or so with both the bloom and the fish kill. And I very much want to respond to your issues and your questions as best I can. And so do me a favor, and actually probably, you know, the board as well. If you get up to speak, I'm going to just hand you the mic. Just introduce yourself. If you're a recreational fishing guide, let me know. I want to get a sense of who you all are, kind of where your head's at. We are in a community moment that is a serious environmental issue in the lagoon. I'd like to be able to say that it's, you know, we're at the end of it. I don't think we are. We are at a point in our normal seasonal cycle where we should be looking the best that the lagoon looks. We should be looking the clearest. In fact, last year at this time, we were actually starting to see some recovery of seagrasses from the 2011-2012 event. And, you know, I think it's problematic and pretty safe to say we probably lost a lot of that recovery and this impact to our local fisheries in the areas that are impacted. If you've been there, you've seen it, you smelled it, you know it's severe. And you probably left an image with you like it did with me. And I've been around a few fish kills. This one got me emotionally more than probably any I've ever seen, mainly because of some of the size of the fish and the numbers and the concentration. So it was graphic, it's bad, and there's no indication that somehow we're going to kind of just slowly, easily slip out of this to a better moment, because we're headed into our hot, usually rainy, and more stressful season. And so we need to take this moment and see what we need to do. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you guys, is kind of give you a quick update. I've got some just quick slides on what's the problem, you know, who are the players out there, the plankton, because we're calling it a brown bloom, and it is, but it's not all that. And just kind of we'll stop at that point, because to be perfectly honest, you know, when we first talked, Frank and I, we were talking about giving an update, you know, on the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, and this is a more important. If we get the time and you want, we can talk about what we're about to do with the NEP, but the fact is I think you're probably more interested about what we're going to do right now and in the next several weeks to several months. And I can address those issues as you ask questions. So you guys good with that? Yeah. Anybody got a burning, I want to get something out right now, or my head's going to spin off? Because I'll give you the mic. All right. All right, I'm Dwayne DeFries. I'm the new director of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program that was delivered literally to the IRL Council, a new layer of special district of Florida government, just in January 8th. So we are literally in that reorg and then responding as best we can to this situation. And I'm not going to go through, I just did this in Florida Tech, but you know, the real answer to this one, everybody's pointing fingers in some direction. We got to get in front of a mirror before we start pointing fingers. And so I'm going to point a finger at me so you can get the picture. This is my house. Just a few weeks ago on one of these El Nino, it's only about 1.5 inches of rain. This is the corner of my street on Shannon and DeLand. This is Shannon. This is my drain. You can see the leaf litter. You can see the drainage. If I had just fertilized, and you can tell by that lawn, I don't fertilize and I don't water, but if I had, I would have done so legally. It would have gone down that drain, and I'm still not sure yet, but I think that one may be heading to a baffle box by the ocean. But most of the Barre Island is heading one way or the other. It's going to wind up in a surface water somewhere or a groundwater somewhere. And then if you look at the northern end of the lagoon, and this is a little old, I actually did this in 2009 for NASA when we were talking about sea level rise, but we have 300,000 septic tanks along the lagoon in 5 counties. A lot of them are old, some of them aren't working. We know that those septic tanks do nothing to mitigate nitrogen, and we know that the groundwater input of nitrogen is one of those areas that we need to look at. And so when you begin to think about what just drove this bloom, you really only need to think about 4 or 5 sources. First in my mind, and this is not as a scientist, this is a surfer, kayaker, fisherman who's been on the system and who looked at all the science coming out of 2011, 2012, the nutrients that are already in our system are enough of a problem to drive and sustain these blooms. So that muck that we have in that system and the super high concentration of nutrients in that muck, you don't need to have anything else to drive a bloom of this magnitude. And with this particular brown algal species, and I'll talk to that in a minute, this is like one of those weeds you don't want ever in your house or your lawn or anywhere. It's a robust, really aggressive, very adaptive, something we hadn't seen in the past before 2011. And once it gets a foothold, it's hard to get rid of. In Texas, where they had that brown algal, they call it the Texas brown tide. First we had seen it. They bloomed continuously for almost 8 years. So as much as I hate to say there is good news, is that this one seems to have not lasted as long as it might have. But I have to tell you, we still have color out there, and there's still a lot of brown. So we are not out of the woods on this. How many of you get this system? Understand? Actually, let me ask a different question. How many of you actually don't understand what drives a bloom? Just the simple, not the scientific story, the simple story. Is everybody comfortable? I'll do it really quick. If you think of all the inputs, so septic, off our roads, off our urban runoff, off ag lands, all of that 50, 60, 70, 80 years of development we did on land, we had a mindset, it was probably appropriate 50, 80 years ago, and that is if we have too much water, we don't want to flood, where do we send the water? We send it to tide. And if an estuary is between us and the ocean, then it goes into an estuary. So the first pollutant that we have actually is just fresh water. Too much, too fast, and it doesn't do the normal filtration through wetlands and through the ground. And so we've changed the delivery of water. And then when you add humans, and you add wastewater, and you add litter, and all the stuff that we get thrown off our cars, the rubber, the oil, all of that on the road beds, then that pollutant load, including the nutrients, come down into the system, and the nutrients become a fertilizer for algae. And if you've ever had a pool go green in Florida, and if you have a pool, I know you have, I know mine has, that's exactly what happens. You get just enough light, the temperature gets right, you have some nitrogen and phosphorus, it goes green, the algae blooms, And then what happens, depending on the algae, is when they die, those blooms almost always run out of steam because they run out of nutrients. What happens? Those cells die, and then bacteria come in and actually start decomposing those cells, and that literally eats oxygen. So oxygen literally gets sucked out of the system with that decomposition. These algae fall down, lay down on the bottom as muck. That muck is like water, almost like mayonnaise. Every time the wind blows, it stirs it up. Every time the wind blows, that nutrient concentration gets stirred up. And this interaction between the bottom of the river and that water column changes. Chemically, it changes physically. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm a scientist. There's some things we are really dumb about. And one of the things we have been really dumb about for every bit of 50 years is if you look at any oceanography or any marine biology text, we talk about the water column and we always talk about chemistry. And we don't talk about it as if it's a critical habitat. And those of you who are fishing guides, how many guides do we have in here? A few? Anybody work in the lagoon? Well, you know, Alex, that's habitat. That's where the forage fish are. They're, you know, the little guys, the shrimp, are eating the small plankton. Somebody's eating the shrimp. Somebody's eating the small fish. When that gets disrupted, the whole system becomes imbalanced. So all of these loads that come into the system, and let's just think nutrients without all of the other issues of temperature and salinity and pH. When conditions get right, that condition can change, and you have a whole suite of possible algae types that might bloom in the right condition. And here's a bunch that we have already identified in the lagoon, and that photo is from about, I think it's, I don't have my glasses on, but it's a, you know, it's in the last month, how green it was. And so we are blooming right now in a combination of two. We have one of these two, and we'll find out once the water quality comes back. And I can tell you for sure, because I was on the water just after New Year's, and we were green, we weren't brown. And that bloom was starting in the southern end of Mosquito Lagoon and Banana Lagoon. And it was strange, because I could have depth, clear depths to a couple meters, and literally move less than a quarter mile in the boat and have almost no visibility. So we had patchy blooms going on. And then this Oreoumbra, the brown tide organism, came in and kind of has overtaken the color of the lagoon. So you see it brown, but the fact is we have two blooms going on right now simultaneously, brown and that green complement. So it's probably more than two species. There may be multiple species. And of course, and Alex, I'm getting a lot of requests. Is that your picture?
Yes, sir.
I'll talk to you later. There's some folks who'd like to use it, but I want to make sure I've got your permission, you know, to send it out. I know I talked to you before. That on the right, you see what the brown tide bloom looked like before, and the result, these massive fish kills, for the most part, are the loss of oxygen. And I'm going to say one caveat here, and until we get the toxicology back, I can't say for sure that it's not a toxicity issue, because some of those blue-green bacteria, the cyanobacteria, can become toxic, but my gut is telling me the rapidity and the numbers suggest full oxygen depletion, where it hit them so fast and so quickly that even those big gator trout that we saw just didn't have time to migrate out of the area, and they were all, you know, for some degree first stressed and then lost. Here's the reason why I say I'm sure it's two blooms and more. This data is from Edie Witter at Orca. You know, she's got a number of her Kilroy sensors out there. This sensor is actually Crane Creek, and actually if you look at that light green, you know, you can look at, that's just baseline kind of a check, and you can see both oxygen and the number of cyanobacteria. See how fast the bloom expands? And it ran for a number of days, if not weeks. And look at how fast it crashed. And right along with that decomposing, dying cyanobacteria bloom, oxygen basically drops out, and then you begin to have a fish kill. Although I have not heard of any floating fish by Crane Creek, and possibly because it wasn't fast enough, and you have water moving a little bit through that system, and so systems react differently in complicated ways. And not to add insult to injury on the lagoon, you all know that for many months, because of the amount of rain we've had this season, we've been discharging from Lake Okeechobee out to Caloosahatchee and out the St. Lucie River. The major impact of that is a massive salinity change to fresh water. Of course, that water is carrying, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other pollutants, but the biggest negative impact is really having so much water, a massive drop in salinity, and have it for a really long time. And I've been told by people who know that we are going to be discharging for many more months. There is that much water in the system, and so it's not unlikely that even with no rain, that you will see discharges, even though they decrease the volume, that negative impact may last very much right up until June. And if we get into the rainy season, and then all of a sudden, we're pumping, back into Lake O, we could see a whole repeat of this cycle. And so as much as I'd love to tell you I'm optimistic, to be honest, I'm not. I'm hopeful that I'm wrong, that what I think might happen doesn't happen. These systems are resilient. They're hard to predict. And I don't care who the scientist is. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But we do know that we have a system that's vulnerable, that is susceptible to this. And we are going into the high-risk season with a system that has almost no resistance like a healthy system would. If this system wasn't already under stress, a normal El Nino year, you might have a bloom or two. Blooms happen naturally in systems, but blooms of this intensity, this duration, and this often is not a symptom of just the Indian River Lagoon. Look at any estuary in North America, and most of them are suffering the same issues. Those that aren't actually got in front of their issues early on. Tampa Bay is a really good model, where Tampa Bay spent every bit of 10 years addressing nutrient loads aggressively. Now remember, Tampa Bay has a lot of flushing. It's a full tidal system, a little different than what we're dealing with in a lagoon. The first 5 years they saw water quality improvements. The second 5 years, now they have seagrass extension that's every bit it's at the 1943 levels. And people use that as an example for us, and I caution them. In 2006, 2007, our seagrass expanse was actually higher than 1943. Many of us, me included, thought we were on the right path. And then 2011, it really happened earlier in my mind. 2008, we started a seagrass expansion slow down. It started to inflect 2009. And then 2011, the wheels came off when the super bloom happened, which was those green algae. And then in 2012, it was followed by the brown algae, the Oreo umbra. And that's the culprit. I'm not going to go into it other than to describe it in human terms. It's tiny. It's adaptable. It really is one of those organisms that when everything else is stressed, it's happy. So when salinities are high, and I was telling Alex a little while ago, I was out with Commissioner Kurt Smith because he said, you got to look at my house. It's green, but it's a weird color green. And so he took us out in a boat. This is 4 weeks ago. And while it wasn't dense, we were in a full bloom. But I took a refractometer to check salinity. And I'm expecting to see 20 parts per thousand. And in fact, it was almost 31, right in front of Turkey Creek. And it surprised me to the point where I was sitting there with my $200 instrument doing this on the side of the gunnel. And Kurt's looking at me going, I thought he was a PhD and he knew what he was doing. And the fact is I was right. The numbers that came out of the state this week for last week, we are in high salinity. the brown algae likes high salinity, but it can live through a range of salinities. The scary thing is that it modifies its own environment. And so most blooming organisms, and you see this in your pools, they'll go green and they'll just crash. Well, this organism can actually shift back and forth. It adapts not only its metabolism, but it's the genes it turns on and off. So if nitrogen becomes limiting, it can start to move to phosphorus. And so we have an organism that is absolutely perfectly adapted to a system that is stressed, that is, up and down, that is, going through cycles of rain and drought, cold and hot. And that's how it has sustained itself for so long in Texas. And it's interesting to me, a question I can't answer, but the scientists are all looking at this. So how do you actually get in front of an animal like this or a plant like this when it finally, gets involved in your system? And there is an easy answer to that, but we're not sure how far it's going to take us. And the fact is you have to get the nutrients out of the system. If the fertilizer is there to sustain a bloom and the right conditions are there to have one of these players that you don't want, that it's a harmful algae, then you have to go to the source. And, Robert Weaver here, Dr. Weaver is here, who's done a lot of modeling, so if you ask about flushing the system, and I know some of you will, he and I may differ philosophically on the opportunities there, but the fact is we need to look at every single opportunity for restoration with an open mind. But for me, the simple solution is go to the heart of the problem, solve the problem. Sending water to the ocean, to me, just puts risk out there on our beaches. And being a surfer, I don't know if you all were surfing on Sunday, it was, just gorgeous. 40-foot visibility, I thought I was in the Bahamas. And I was sitting there, because that morning I had seen the fish kill way before a lot of other people, and I literally felt emotionally torn about, I'm enjoying this amazing experience in crystal clear, almost Bahamian blue water. Just over that Barrow Island, we have dead fish. And, could we open that up and help? And my answer is we need to do that science before we do something that might not be the right thing. And for me, the one I don't get quite yet is this salinity issue. So bringing full salinity seawater in may flush, but it may also make a favorable salinity environment. So we have some work to do, but we have to keep an open mind. And if you want to, hear about, he's got a really cool idea, but we have to vet everything we're thinking about so we don't do more harm than good, because this system will recover on its own if we just address the pollution sources that we as citizens are putting in that system through stormwater, through groundwater, and groundwater is a combination of septic, especially septic that's not working. It's also our wastewater, our old infrastructure wastewater. Like, I know my house probably has leaky pipes because I know my house, when it was built, has Orangeburg, and I know the life of Orangeburg was like 10 years ago or maybe more. We need to look at every source that we can reduce, stormwater, and then we need to actively and aggressively put project after project after project in the ground. Now, there have been a lot of angry, I don't know what we'd call it, accusations that nobody knows what's going on. That's not true. We know what's going on. That nobody's doing anything. The fact is we are doing a lot. There are a lot of projects in the pipeline. There are projects underway right now. In fact, 5 dredge projects. I don't know how many are dredging at the moment. I saw 2 when I was on the lagoon the other day. 5 I know are in the pipeline for immediate starts, and we just got a big slug of money, $25 million from the legislature to continue that effort. But it's not going to be enough to sustain over the long haul of this because we have to do much more. We're going to have to address the infrastructure. That's expensive, and so it's going to take public will, public intent, clear vision, all of us talking as a society, not pointing fingers, but pointing to solutions that move us from the lagoon we have to the lagoon that I want. So I get asked, so when do you know you have success? And here's my success story. When we're not making excuses for water quality in the lagoon. When guys like Alex and every, commercial recreational guide fishermen, because they're making a living on the lagoon with fly fishermen and fishers, and sport fishers, where they're out and they're going, gosh, this was the best day ever. But the other side of this for me, I grew up around working waterfronts my whole life. I used to clam commercially, just to make side money when I was a kid. I'd like to see a robust commercial clam industry. I'd like to see a robust, and I know some of you probably put oyster mats out there, and you're going to be mad at me. There's nothing I'd like better than go to Bunky's in Satellite Beach and order an oyster that came out of the Indian River Lagoon instead of one that came out of somewhere that isn't, locally grown, locally sourced, locally eaten, and I'd gladly pay $3 an oyster for it. And crabs, and so that's where we need to go. We need to get back to that, knowing that what we thought we knew of the lagoon may not be achievable because these systems change over time. We have global climate change, we've got a changing landscape, we have sea level rise. Expect the system not to be exactly like what those of us who are in the 50 plus, and I look back, you should expect in a half a century that systems are going to shift a little bit, but you still want them vibrant, robust, and so it's about economy, it's about environment, and it's about us. It's about people. This is a social issue as much as it is an environmental and economic issue. And so if I say today to anybody, I want to spend $1 billion next year to do restoration, a lot of times the first reaction I get is $1 billion. We can't afford that. That's a lot of money. And the reason we get that response is because we haven't done a good job of talking about value. And we haven't done a good job talking about return on investment value. Those of you who are in industry know that if I go to aviation and aerospace and say, if I invest $1 from the public sector, how much money am I getting back? You're not getting somebody to say, well, I'll get back to you. They know exactly what the return on investment value is. If you go to tourism, they've got that number. If you go up to Port Canaveral or any of the 15 deepwater ports in Florida, they know exactly what return on investment value is. We don't have that number for this lagoon, but I can give you a ballpark. The Indian River Lagoon is worth $3.7 billion a year based on 2007-2008 data. That's a year. So if I invest $1 billion to protect that $3.7 billion a year investment, that ROI isn't too bad. So with that, I think I'm going to just, if you guys want to talk about the NEP, I'm going to just do that verbally. But there's 2 more slides I want to show you if I can get back to that one. We are not in this alone. So one of my plans, my visions, it's already underway, is to form an alliance with the 6 other estuaries that are designated nationally in the state of Florida. It's a powerful coalition of not just people and communities, but of political clout. And political clout ebbs and flows. And so we could stay right at the moment. We probably get support and say, it should be about us. This should be just about the Indian River Lagoon. We are in the worst shape, so don't give money to Tampa Bay. You should give money to us because we're in trouble. And there's a lot of validity to that position. But to get year-to-year sustained funding, we need to think bigger and think broader and think strategically. And so we are in discussions now, and here are the estuaries. And I'll start on the West Coast. And what you're looking at is not just the designated area, but the watershed. So we are looking at the National Estuary Program within the EPA. That's 4 estuaries. So we've got Indian River Lagoon, Charlotte Harbor, Tampa Bay, Sarasota Bay. Think about next year's legislative leadership. And we got some really heavy hitters over there in that Sarasota, Tampa Bay. In fact, one of them, Jack Latvala, I know well. A good guy who understands the problem that we're dealing with. We look at the 3 National Estuarine Research Reserves under NOAA, Rookery Bay in Naples, Apalachicola Bay, which I would argue is in just as much, maybe even worse condition than we are, because we can solve our problem pretty clearly with investment. Their challenges are so much bigger, multi-state, and they have completely lost that oyster fishery because of massive water changes. And so they are a struggling estuary, and none of these are in perfect shape. Tampa's looking probably the best. And just north of us, the Guano-Tolomano-Matanzas system. So we have 41% of Florida's coastline, 16 of 35 counties. That's a voice. And in fact, we can learn from each other, because best practices are best learned through large coalitions of very smart people, businessmen and women, citizens, scientists, people who are fishing. Everybody's got a say in this. Everybody needs to have a voice in this. And what the recreational commercial fisher sees on the lagoon very often, and Frank will testify because Frank and I have known each other for a while, I'm going with that gut feeling a lot of times before I'm calling one of my PhD friends and saying, what do you think? Because you see it, you live it, and you see it every day. So with that, I'm going to just open up for questions. But this is the goal, basically. One community, one lagoon, one voice. I have a good friend, Dick Nunes, the ex-chairman of the board at Disney. Dick is in his 80s. He calls me on a regular basis, partly to give me a hard time, and partly to give me good advice. He's been a mentor, and he said, imagine if the state of Florida was a global leader in clean water technology. Imagine if the state of Florida was the first state in the nation to say, we are the clean water, the first clean water state in the United States. We are looking, in fact, some of you I know work up at the Cape. We are looking ourselves straight in the eye with serious faces and having a really serious and exciting, I love space, by the way. All my family's in aviation and aerospace. We're having a serious conversation about sending humans to Mars. Cleaning our waste stream is not rocket science. There's some challenges there, but that we can be that technologically advanced, that forward-looking, and then look at water in the way we do today and say what we did 50 to 100 years ago is okay in 21st century society should be unacceptable. And yes, it's going to take an investment, and yes, it may cost us some money out of our pocket, but that innovation of technology can get us a very long way, and we should not forget about the return on investment of being the smartest water stewards in the world and what that investment would mean in clean tech jobs and opportunities. So anyway, the mic is yours. I'll do my best to respond to all questions, and if you ask about flushing, I'm going to go to Dr. Weaver and put him on the spot. Oh, Dr. Weaver.
Robert Weaver. Thank you very much. Dwayne, a lot of folks have, a few folks have come to me expressing concerns that the releases from Lake Okeechobee are affecting us up here, and I think it would be nice for you to comment on how those systems are still separate.
There is no evidence and no common sense way that I can see that water not only not getting here, but most of it isn't even getting to Indian River County. And this is why I know. I have a good friend who lives in the north side of Martin County, and on Sunday, people were fishing in his dock, and he had like 30 to 40 foot visibility, and the water quality was almost pristine. So we have the same system. We have very similar issues. They have the same chronic issues as we do, by the way. So if you take the Lake O issue away, that event-driven discharge of water, they're not out of the woods because they still have septic, sewer. They have all the problems we have on the chronic side. But no, that water is not affecting us. And if you want me to give you at least the common sense evidence, then if it were, we would see blooms starting south and moving north. And there is no evidence to that. In fact, the water today down towards the inlet, right across the street from Earl's Hideaway. I wasn't in there, but I was actually on the shoreline. It actually was looking better today than it's looked in a while. It still had a little color, but the clarity was significantly better, and there's no reports that I'm aware of any kind of fish kills or problems down there at the moment. Doesn't mean they're not vulnerable to it still, but yeah, that water is not impacting us. And I told you earlier when I began, I actually saw this bloom beginning up by Oak Hill, Southern Mosquito Lagoon, Southern Banana River Lagoon. It was 2 days after New Year's. So this bloom has been rolling for a while. And those folks who are way more expert than I, even with that, 2015 kind of clean water time we had, the fact is there were still areas that were rolling blooms. We've never stopped bubbling in spots with both cyano and probably brown algae. So we have been in a continuous risk situation for a while. Yes?
Hi, thank you for a good presentation. I learned some things I didn't know before. My name is Marla Robb. I'm an RN. I'm at Patrick Air Force Base. We live in North Housing, which is right along the river. And I've been concerned because we all live along the river. We all run around the river. We walk our dogs, all that kind of thing. And I was noticing a cluster of illness around the time that we got very strange fumes coming off the river before the fish kill. That was metallic, like rotten broccoli, very stinging to the eyes and the throat. So I did a survey of people who live on the river, and I found a cluster of symptoms and so on, sore throat, hoarseness, asthma, migraines, nausea, bad conjunctivitis, and so forth. And I'm concerned because you noted that the Ario umber lagunensis often co-occurs with cyanobacteria, which do secrete cyanotoxins. And they can, and I believe those can become toxic aerosols, which might explain the symptoms. How do we protect ourselves if you say more may be coming? How do we protect, and our pets who have also been sick? What can we do apart from the long-term getting the river clean?
You're the RN. You probably know better than me. Here's my common sense answer, and I was asked by a reporter from WFIT, and I really get nervous when you ask a marine biologist surfer about, what should I do medically? You're on thin ice. But I've surfed all over the world, and I've seen really bad infections, and I know people who have had Vibrio infections and some that have come close to death. And here's my advice. Your symptoms actually, this is the first I've heard of this, would not be counter to the possibility that one of those secondary bloomers, could be a cyano, could be one of the others, had some toxic capacity. I'd love to be able to say, the evidence that's collected, both in the fish, in the toxicology labs, are going to either say yes or no. But toxicology is tricky when you're dealing with, necropsies. And we saw that during the 2011-2000 episode. Everybody assumed, gosh, those dolphins that died, we're going to get positive toxicology. And everything came out inconclusive. And so kind of those cause and effect issues. So here's the common sense answer. Obviously something was going on. I mean, that number of issues is not normal. If in fact you are outside, and I don't know, how many of you were here when we had red tide in the ocean? Remember how irritating that was? Now there is a toxin that we know is neurotoxic. People are super sensitive. It goes aerosol. If you have autoimmune issues, you should by no means get involved in any cleanup efforts with dead and decaying fish. Stay away from the water. Don't go in the water. Don't get wet. If you are healthy and you have open sores, you shouldn't be messing around in that water either, even if you aren't immunocompromised. Just good common sense. And if you are working as a volunteer or doing some cleanup behind your yard and you do get cut, this is just my personal recommendation. I don't take any cuts in any saltwater body for granted. And so when I'm out in crystal clear water in western, Sumatra, and I get a coral cut, It's vicious, but we basically scrub it with a brush until it bleeds. We immediately go on oral antibiotics. But we go surfing, but, it may not be the smartest thing. But in the lagoon, my recommendation to you all is go see a doctor straight up, because it's not worth taking a chance. And for any of you who have been around a Vibrio incident, if you get Vibrio and you are immunocompromised, your life is in danger, and it can happen within hours or days. And so don't presume, that every cut is going to be benign. Be cautious. If, in fact, you're having aerosol issues, I would recommend call the Brevard County Health Department. I think you should report the information that you have. And one of the worst things about these kinds of events is that we don't communicate with each other. And if you're not communicating to the proper channels, you may be on to an issue we need to be concerned about, but if you don't talk to the health department, nobody knows. And then after the fact, we've missed something that maybe we could learn something about. So be cautious, be careful. I have to tell you, having been around a lot of carcasses, a lot of those symptoms I'll get just with odor. And so including dizziness, I don't like that smell. And I've done a fair number of necropsies when I was with Hub SeaWorld, and a couple when I was a young graduate student, and almost all those symptoms I'll get just being around dead and decaying material.
That wasn't decomp. The odor was very different.
Yeah, that tinny stuff to me kind of suggests that, that to me is something you need to talk to somebody about that. But the Brevard County Health Department, I wish we had some really good toxicologists like in town, marine toxicologists. They're hard to come by. We have some great ones in the state, but I don't think we have any locally. Robert, you know any? We talked about this at Florida Tech. Yeah, I think maybe University of Florida, Harbor Branch, but it will make its way around. So, first talk to them, and then let's you and I stay in contact, because that's the kind of information an NEP can and should be thinking about, because this won't be the first, it isn't the first and won't be the last algal bloom fish kill we see, sadly. Yes?
Hi, my name is Richard Lieber. I'm a fairly new resident of Satellite Beach. What I wanted to know, has there been any studies, or do you have any ideas of where the different percentages of these nutrients are coming from? Because as individuals, we know that by not adding lawn clippings into the water behind your house, by not using fertilizers, that can help, but that may just be a Band-Aid on a jugular. As far as I know, last September and October, Indian Harbor Beach dumped 21 million gallons of sewage into the water. And Palm Bay had done some too. I saw a study about that today. So have there been any studies done where these nutrients are coming? And we really need to target the big issues first. I mean, we all have to do what we have to do to help out. But is it just putting a Band-Aid on a slit jugular?
The answer is that we don't have definitive answers on these percentages because it's complicated. It's not just the nutrient concentration, it's the load. And that load varies from season. So if we're in dry season, then stormwater is not a big problem. Groundwater is probably the predominant issue. If it's rainy season, stormwater may change its percentage relatively, to the system. And so we can't, even if we knew, we have to attack all of those with vigor, as we can, because those projects are not all equally available to us. So there's some low-hanging fruit issues. So if you ask me, and this is just me, Dwayne DeFries, and not the scientist, because I don't have data to support it, but my gut tells me after looking at all of the science that has occurred and all of the discussions after 2011, 2012, that if we were going to put our biggest effort, that we need to be focused on muck removal, because there is not just a nutrient load issue, but that muck is a turbidity issue as well. And so, where it's really high intensity, we need to go after that. And then for me, it's the big stormwater conveyances that attach us inland. So you look at Turkey Creek, Crane Creek, Little Flounder Creek, and you go, how much can be coming down there? There's some new information coming out. It hasn't been published yet. It's with Orca also, but it makes a lot of sense to me. And they're looking at stormwater conveyance from a little different lens. And the lens is this. So let's say, I'm living next to Bill Potter here, and we share a backyard with this tiny little ditch. It's barely a ditch. It's just a little depression in our backyard. And as, my property goes through your property, it hits that aisle, which is still a tiny little ditch. And so my normal practices would, I mow the lawn, and go to that and just drop it in that little depression. The idea is that we're probably not connected to the lagoon. We are maybe 5 miles away. We get a 2 to 3 inch rainfall in the kind of dumps that we get, and the fact is that becomes a moving body of water that picks up everything along the way and deposits it somewhere in an estuary or in a tributary. And so that's where we are on that side. Here's what I'm hearing from Brevard County, who's doing some really aggressive and really interesting modeling. We try to measure and model TMDLs, which are total maximum daily loads. So all our inputs, even this city here has got TMDL requirements. And Satellite Beach, along with many cities, have been aggressive in looking at swales and looking how they manage and putting baffle boxes at the end of streets. But the model is starting to show that groundwater may be a much bigger contributor than we thought. And so where's the groundwater inputs coming from? Failing septic is a no-brainer. If you have a septic tank and you haven't tested it, you've been in your home for 30 years, you want to be responsible, go test it. And if it's not functional, you should go get it fixed, get it replaced, get it repaired. If you can hook up the sewer, figure out how to do that financially if you can. But, that's kind of on us, our own footprint on our own homes. There may be other issues with groundwater. In fact, I know there are. We take our wastewater from our, plants, our sewage plants, and so we take the sludge, we land spread it. It's loaded with nitrogen, loaded with phosphorus. And so where does that go? Well, some of it gets picked up, but some of it winds up in the groundwater, and eventually it's going to go somewhere in Florida. And so while I wish as a scientist I could say, do one, and I'm going to get a percentage return on investment, right now we need to take advantage of every opportunity to reduce nutrients, big and small, because we need to get back to the natural system. And the assumptions that the little ones are just Band-Aids, if you take 100,000 Band-Aids that didn't cost much, you've got something. And the big projects, and our first investment at the NEP was the $250,000 that was coming up to us from the state through DEP, got immediately combined with $100,000 in addition to the $500,000 they're bringing us at St. Johns River Water Management District to look at the big stormwater conveyances that we haven't already been thinking about. So if any of you are in Palm Bay, go check out the Wheeler Stormwater Project. We just cut the ribbon on that one. It's an amazing project where stormwater that used to run straight down to the lagoon now is meandering through natural wetlands. It's being filtered, it's being cleaned, it gets released in a managed way. We need to change the infrastructure of water. And so as the NEP moves through, I'd say the next year, we'll have better answers to where some of those loads are. But in the interim, and I've told this to my scientists and my friends, they don't like it, we don't need to be 95% confident anymore. If you come from business, and I just came out of 7 years in industry and a startup, gosh, if you're 20% that you're going to get rich, you're going to take a gamble on that 20% and throw your hat all in, as long as it's a calculated risk. And yes, there is a risk that we might spend some money, but we're still fixing problems along the way. So the two parameters I think that we need to look at most effectively when we're doing projects is how many pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus will this project hold back from the lagoon, and how many gallons of water can we store and treat. And that is a really good metric for stormwater. And for septic, it's like, if you're failing, fix it. And if you're close and you're not failing, but you have a nitrogen stream, then we need to think about options for all of us. 300,000 septic tanks, it's a massive undertaking. That's going to happen community by community as you can, as money is available. And I know that there are efforts in Congress right now looking for ways to think about maybe financially incentivizing, because this is not just our problem. This is a national problem along coastal areas. But yeah, I wish we had a little tighter nutrient budget, but we're going to have to work with what we have. But we'll try to do our best to make sure you get the biggest bang for the buck. And I think everybody, state, federal, everybody gets that we don't want to throw money at projects that don't have a return. Yes?
I have a few questions. I'm sorry. My name is Shivani Patel. I'm a political activist here in Brevard County. I'm good writing down questions. Can I ask a few?
I'll give you a couple and then we'll come back.
Cool. They're going to be really fast. Thank you so much for all your information, by the way. I've been waiting to get some answers, and you've really cleared up a lot of stuff for me. I just wanted to start off by saying, when you say test your septic system, it's not that affordable for the majority of Brevard County. I live on North Banana River. I own the BP over there, and my customers, they are fishermen. They're captains of charter boats. They rely on this industry, and they don't make enough money to just test their septic system. So it's a state funding system. It's Rick Scott. And the second thing I just want to say, have you...
She didn't say she was a political activist. You were great.
Sorry, I have to say it. I want to, in a sense, inform everyone that's around me at all times. That's what I do. The failing lock system, have you ever thought about that? You said that the salinity of the water, is not high enough. But recently I just realized, I didn't really know much about the lock system. And my family owns a few hotels. And every day we have about 30 guests that go on cruises. And to get one cruise out of the port, it takes about an hour. And there's about 3 to 4 cruises that leave. I think every other day. So that's a lot of the lock system being open. And I think that's a lot of access from the salinity coming into our system. So I don't know which part of the water you're talking about, but has all the water been tested?
Would every drop in the...
No, it hasn't, because we can't afford it. I'm not trying to be confrontational. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll answer in a minute.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I always sound confrontational because I've been thinking about this for months, and, I've been here for 20 years. I've lived across the North Banana River.
Becoming a marine biologist. We like
Yeah, I'm going to be a politician. I think I'm going to be better at that, I think.
We're good with confrontation.
One more thing I have to ask you. The question is, as a scientist, can you tell the community how we can be better at personal responsibility and make it affordable for an economy that's as weak as ours? Because we are not making much money. So how do we become more personally responsible and afford to do so?
Okay, let me start with the lock, and Robert, I'm going to throw that to you so you can just let them know what your model, if you're okay, is doing. But let me just lead in. We actually did back, I forget what year it is, they opened the locks at one point with the idea that they, if they opened it up on, they would get a lot of water exchange. And I understand, at least, and I'm just talking from memory, that there was a lot of sedimentation that actually created such a problem that those locks were then impossible to open, and then all of a sudden you couldn't get the tourist boats through. And so there was a big problem with sediment load blocking the lock. So is that what you're talking about? Yeah, and they've been working on the lock system for a while. What Dr. Weaver has been looking at is kind of a weir delivery system, where you might take advantage of kind of a high tide pulse. And, with my caveat, that we should be open-minded, but we also need to be careful about unintended consequences. I'm going to let, just do a brief description of the model, because you do get, moderate water transport to the south, depending on that head, how high the tide is and what's going on. So I'm going to give this one to you.
Sure, thank you. Just to first start off following up, the locks were never really designed to be open continuously. And so as as Dr. DeFries was saying, they did attempt this before I moved down here, so maybe about 6-7 years ago. And not only did the actual locks sediment in, which cost a few $1 million to get that out, but where that sediment came from was scour at the base of the lock system. And so the locks themselves were under threat of failing. They just weren't designed to be open like that. Now the locks have reached near the end of their design life, which is why you see all the retrofitting going on now. But in order to get the locks to a point where you could leave them open without that scour would take a considerable investment or replacement of the lock system altogether. The work that I've done, along with a graduate student of mine, is we looked at alternate ways of getting ocean water into the lagoon. For me, an inlet's a non-starter. There's too much cost, too much risk of coastal erosion, there's too much operation and maintenance on that, and you can't really manage it. Once it's built, it's there. In order to keep it open, you're going to have to armor it, and so there's no way to say, oops, we have unintended consequences, let's close that in. There's another huge cost associated with that. So we looked at things that were more cost manageable. What we looked at particularly was a weir system. Think of it as a low-crested dam that you stage the height of that weir at some level just above the mean water line. So when the tide rises in the port, you get ocean water flushing into the lagoon. And then when the tide drops again, there's no exchange. So you get this twice-a-day pumping of water in that raises the elevation right there in the Banana River and drives a southerly current. Typically, our system here under just tidal flushing alone does not flush for over 300 days. It's almost over a year. You put something in the water, it stays there. All of this fish kill out here, all the nutrient load and detritus associated with that, it'll be there for a year or longer. It's just not going to move anywhere. But under some managed flushing projects, we can actually, at least our models have shown, and they've been corroborated by models from other faculty at FIT, that we can reduce the residence time down to about 40 days. So at that point, the models are projecting that we can flush the Banana River and the Indian River in about 40 days. Now, there are some concerns with salinity, and so we're going to look into that with some more higher level environmental modeling to look at what the salinity effects would be throughout the IRL. Because we're generating this flow that goes quite a bit south of this ocean water, there could be some salinity issues. And then another concern is where's all this, we're basically just flushing all this mess out into the ocean. And sure, when you first turn a system like this on, there will be a pulse of what was stagnant water in this system that's pushing down and out either through Sebastian Inlet or if it transports further down Fort Pierce Inlet. But the idea is that you would have a managed system that is operated on a regular basis, thereby not kind of not having these types of severe algal bloom issues that we have now. So that's the thought. We're working to get some additional funding to back that up with some environmental modeling to address the concerns on the science side. Where we modeled it was up at the port because there's already existing infrastructure there, and they already have a plan in place with the Army Corps of Engineers for dredging of the port, so we could, it seems like a very good place to start.
And I'm going to just reiterate my concern, even though I like this. I'd like to see this modeled. I'd like to see the studies. I'd like to see where this might go over the long term. To me, it simply does not address the problem, and the problem is what we put into our system. So the reason we are here today, concerned about the lagoon, in my mind, is that we decided that our waste stream and water should go to the ocean or to the coast. And my worry about the philosophy of this, even though I could see this actually used in a lot of different other ways, actually within tributaries that flow, I can see this being a really cool technology, but I don't want to do symptomatic treatments as an excuse for us not to fix the basic problem, which is our water systems, which are pretty straightforward. I mean, so the fact is, we need to look at it all. We're going to learn a lot. Robert and I are in a lot of conversations, and, we can agree to disagree, but I want to see those models. I want to see his project funded. I'd like to see a pilot. We'll learn a lot about how the system works just in the apparatus and the management of the system, and that kind of trial and error is what science is all about. 10 years ago, we didn't know Oreo umbra existed, and if we didn't put millions of dollars into harmful algal bloom research, we'd be standing here going, what's that? We'd never seen that before. So you will hear a lot, and I'm hearing it a lot. We don't need any more studies. I'm here to tell you, we do. We just don't need to study for study's sake. We need to make sure every dollar we spend on research drives to a management solution, and that's really what ocean engineering is all about, looking for solutions. So, we are working together, and in fact, Florida Tech is a major player within the NEP. Yes?
How you doing?
I'll get back to your last question.
Thanks for sharing everything that you have. I'm actually JB, and I'm with Citizens for Clean Water out of Martin County. And grew up in Martin County, grew up in Florida. It's my home. I surf as well. And actually, we bring awareness to everybody. So Lake Okeechobee, I know that you said if you took away that entity, it's kind of like all Florida together. But just in these past weeks, I'm sure you really know that they dumped over 300 billion gallons out of Fort Myers and ours, where we're at a state of emergency.
Say that again for everybody.
300 billion gallons, and they only took a foot off the lake. And they want the lake at 12 feet, so it's still at 15 feet. So that gives you an idea. So we had a heavy south wind, these past little swell that we were surfing as well, and them algae bloom when the waters sit. So when you mention Martin County, we have that inlet where I have buddies that are commercial fishermen as well. 5 miles offshore, they had Lake Mile. So it did get out of our inlets, but it went to a dump out of our inlets. So who knows what we don't see out there. But also, we have it where there's a solution that's buy the land and send the water south, which Charlie Crest did put that land up for an option, and they let that forfeit. So I was going to take your intake on that and where that is kind of going. I can't do any political pooling or anything like that because I have a 501c3. But I just wanted to get your intake on that, and if we're working as Florida together for this whole clean water lifestyle, that would probably be an entity that would help here just in case it is getting sent or diverted or whatever the case may be. And then all these other projects, which Amendment 1, we're getting $800 million a year, could be used for. So what do you think about that?
Well, first, I cut my teeth in land acquisition here in Brevard County. I was your first director of the Environmentally Endangered Lands Program, and so I am all for buying land. That deal with sugar had some issues that I didn't like. One of them was that we weren't going to get a handle on that land for like 20 years. So there was some things about that real estate deal that were problematic to doing, projects right now. But the reality is that if we're going to move water south from Lake Okeechobee and restore the southern portion of the Everglades, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas's River of Grass, then we have to buy land south. We have to add to that footprint. Then we're going to have to do pretty massive projects, but it's the only way you solve this problem in Lake Okeechobee. If you have not been down there, then you really should do yourself a favor sometime. Take the ride. Just go to the locks. Most of them are pretty accessible. And take a look at what 2 billion gallons a day in reduced flow looks like. I can tell you, when you go from 2 billion to like 3 or 4, it's massive. It's like looking at a sideways, Niagara Falls. We're talking about a massive infrastructure, and this is what we're talking about. My territory actually goes all the way to Martin County, so we represent you. And the NEP is talking, Martin County's part of our council, St. Lucie County, and so we supported, as much as we can, being a state entity, not just the bill that brought over $100 million. What are you guys going to get out of the Harrell bill? I think it's 140. It's $140 million a year for Amendment 1. But what didn't happen in this legislative session is there's not been an appetite to buy land and do real estate deals. That needs to change for down there because there is no other solution. And here's the reality that's sad for me. Even when we talk about the possibility of what Robert has, whatever these solutions are, they're not going to fix what we're going through right now. There is nothing I can do, nothing anybody can do. There's no amount of money today on the table that's going to change this discharge coming out of Lake O for the next 6 months or more, or that's going to stop this algal bloom, and potential fish kill in this cycle. There is no quick fix. But what projects we start today, and the ones that get done are the ones that are step by step going to move us to clean water. And so every one of us in Brevard County need to be supporting Martin County and St. Lucie County in this massive effort to restore the Everglades and Lake Okeechobee, not just because it's the right thing, because it's ours. That is just as much a resource for us as the Indian River Lagoon is a resource, for you. And thanks for taking the trip coming up. I know the ride because I'm going back and forth almost on a daily basis. I thought my commute was over. If you need a place to stay, you can come hang at my house. There may be waves tomorrow. And so, we're with you on that we have a lot of work to do down there. But the players are working better now than they ever have. Yes, we'll start here and go back.
Just on that, where's the opposition coming from for buying that land? Just to continue that.
We have made amazing progress in land acquisition in the state of Florida. Something like, don't quote me on the number, I think it was 3.7 billion, but billions of dollars of conservation land acquisition with Preservation 2000 and then Florida Forever. And so you see the pendulum swing politically, and so there is a number of individuals who think there are enough lands that we need to spend more on management, that land buying may not be in the best interest of the state of Florida. It's a debate that is there.
Is it industries? Is it?
No, it's a political policy position that you see right now. When we passed Amendment 1 with 75% of the vote, it was pretty clear what the intent of that was. There are lawsuits pending about the use of those funds we'll have to wait till those lawsuits. There was interpretation of that law that, to be honest, is a discussion. This is democracy at its finest. Bill, you know this probably better than anybody. Bill Potter is an attorney who helped nations become democratic. And so it's an ugly process at times, but it is a process that each of you have an influence on. And so those of you who are not engaged, and you should never apologize for being, a political advocate. Every single one of us should be a political advocate. Every single one of us should be exercising our right to vote. Every single one of us should be doing our homework about who we vote for. And then when we disagree, when it's finally over, I don't know about you guys, I am sick and tired of the bickering. I couldn't care less about the two parties personally. I just want, the public sector to do the job that we send them out to do, and that is to work with us as people and societies, do the right thing, fix the problem. So, we're in a moment where there is a legitimate debate about the role of government, no matter what side you're on. We need to weigh in on that debate because we do have a constitutional amendment, the Water and Land Legacy Amendment, and that amendment is really clear. And we have a constitution that has language about our responsibilities to protect the lands and waters of the state of Florida, and that is also clear. And so, the process of democracy, in the moment can get pretty dicey. But we need to stick with it, and eventually we'll get to that right place. We always do. But it is frustrating in the moment when you're not seeing something happen and you want it to happen. Let me just finish this one really quickly. What we need to do is just what I said. So, yes, there are financial burdens on septic to sewer. Yes, there are financial burdens on wastewater treatment plants that may not be fully functional. And in fact, the more technology used, the more expensive it is. So one of the challenges is that we need to actually start thinking about the financial mechanisms to make doing the right thing not just possible, but financially plausible for those citizens who are impacted, which includes me, because I guarantee you I've got leaky pipes in India Atlantic at my house, just from what I'm looking at. And I can tell you, I'm a marine biologist. You know, if that's going to cost me 20, 30 grand to knock out walls and cut up slabs, you know, that may be more of a burden than I can afford as well. But, you know, you got to also think about the right thing to do. And so, you know, yes, keep an advocacy position. Question back here. Oh, sorry. How long you guys ready to do this, by the way?
Hi, my name is Angie. Just my question is kind of a follow-up to what you were talking about. We need, investments in our current water systems to alleviate some of the problems we're having, at least down the line. So do you have specific names or positions of people that we need to be putting pressure on? Do we need to be contacting? Who do we need to harass to fix this? Who do we all need to write a letter to? Whose office do we need to stand outside?
No, I'm not giving names. But I will give you some advice.
I will post.
I'm very active on Facebook. Personally, we haven't quite gotten, the Indian River Lagoon NEP in place, and I can tell you what won't work. What doesn't work is being uninformed. What doesn't work is pointing angry fingers at individuals and calling out individuals who represent us in a democratic society and actually being ugly and personal and in fact, threatening. That gets nowhere. Your message needs to be clear, it needs to be defined, and I'm going to give you a bit of advice as an environmentalist who happens to work very well with industry. I have my entire life, who happens to have been appointed by the current governor to CareerSource Florida because I'm really interested in technology and opportunities for jobs and economic growth. If you look at successful 21st century societies, they have vision. That vision isn't just an environmental vision. It's a vision that is environmental, it's social, it's economic, and it's people-driven and place-driven. And when we fracture our communities in angry dialogue, and I am as frustrated as anybody. I spent all my adult life in Florida on this lagoon. I'm a fisherman, a marine biologist. We make our living off that system. And so if you don't think this is personal to us, then and that we're just scientists looking from this long lens of a microscope, you're wrong. But this dialogue has to be intelligent, it has to be crafted, and it needs to have an economic component to it. And so when you say we can't afford to do some of the infrastructure, you're saying some individuals are going to be burdened. But as a society, we clearly can afford, and those societies that figure out ways to do things right in infrastructure, and it's roads, it's schools, it's stormwater, it's all of that. When you get that right, then you have one of those communities that is not just economically and socially vibrant. It's one of those communities where everybody in the world's going, I want to live here. And you know what? We have that. And we still have it. But we have a moment where we're not putting our best foot forward, at least in the lagoon. But the fact is, I've been all over the world. Bill Potter has been all over the world. We can live anywhere we want. But the fact is, we live here because this is a special place that deserves, every investment we can make to make sure it keeps special. And that you shouldn't lose what I would call the positive vision. This can be fixed. It's not so complicated. We are a really smart society, but we need to put our collective mind to it and get the job done.
Thank you. My name's Tim Fallis. I own some property on the Banana River. Maybe you can answer a question. Who decides when to open the locks at the Cape, and does that affect the level of the river? And is it coordinated with other governmental agencies?
Robert, do you know the schedule on that? The locks are just opened on demand.
I had cause to go and talk to some folks about that when I first got down here a few years ago, thinking about possibly using the locks, opening them on kind of a time schedule to time it with the incoming tide. But in fact, the locks are really just opened on demand, so when the boats pass through. The only time that they're open, with both gates open, is under emergency, when the Coast Guard has to get in or out. And it's managed by the Army Corps of Engineers in conjunction with the Coast Guard.
Hi, I'm Melissa Martin from COCO. I'm working on language for a resolution or an ordinance or something that the county commission can consider and perhaps act on something next Tuesday at their next meeting. What, from your experience or insight, not considering big ticket projects like muck dredging and perhaps the pump installation or whatnot, something that the county can do right now to hopefully meet some of the demand in the public outcry right now? What would the one thing be that you would like the county to do on Tuesday?
Yeah, I'd love to say that there's one project that moves the needle in a way that you would see it and I would see it like next week. There is no such project. And so the key is clear sailing, like having a plan. That's actually on my plate. So one of the things the National Estuary Program is mandated to do is to develop a comprehensive management plan for the Indian River Lagoon that considers all of the opportunities, all of the options. Now, the challenge of that is that to do a update of a 2008 comprehensive plan, probably going to take 12 months to 18 months, and we simply don't feel we have the time. So this is what my plan is, at least for this next 2 to 3 years. I am working right now to draft a Vision 2020 plan for the Indian River Lagoon that I will present in draft probably in about a week to the Indian River Lagoon Council. And that plan is going to have probably 5, 6, 7 what I would call clear, broad objectives. It's not going to delineate individual projects yet, because I don't need to do that. What I need to do is to set the stage for this restoration effort, including the individual who is here from South Florida. I mean, while we're doing what we need to do here, we need to keep the pressure on that, projects need to be finished in the SERP, the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, because there's like 66, 67 projects already delineated. At the same time, we are doubling down. For 25 years, we've operated with 600,000. That's it. And we had really good support from the St. Johns River Water Management District. They provided the staff in kind, the GIS map, the science. There was a huge amount of in kind that I'm sure amounts over the 25 years to millions of dollars of contribution. And now we have this coalition that has taken our effective dollars, the 600,000, and expanded the EPA federal funding at 600 to 2.1 million. And so at our next meeting, we are going to name a number of water remediation, habitat remediation projects to try to drive a number of projects forward. Now, they're not giant. Those giant projects are going to take a little time to structure, but there are projects underway with both water management districts that are either getting close to construction, 5 dredge projects underway. Now they've got $25 million to plan. So for me, it's not so much, what one thing you do. It's what are we going to do starting next week, starting this minute, and then move forward every single day until this job is done. Because it is not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be a year. We're in this for every bit of a decade, I believe, and maybe more, before we get to where we want to be. And then we need to be checking our cash flows, which is how clean is the lagoon looking? Are we getting better every single year on a regular basis? Good science, good business, but projects have to start. They have to finish. I'm going to do this. You've been up for a while, so I got you, and I'll get you, and I'll do the loop, okay?
Hi, I'm Alex Reboff. I'm a resident here in Satellite Beach over in the fountains. Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. I trust that you guys have ideas for next week and beyond. I trust that the big projects are happening. We know that from the dredging. For me, I'm more concerned about what residents can do tomorrow. And I understand that that doesn't really move the needle with the actual lagoon's health, but what it does move the needle with is community discussion, involvement, awareness, everything else. Right now, we are in a crisis, and you have everybody's attention. So having everybody's attention as a scientist, what would you recommend that residents could do tomorrow?
Besides not dumping your lawn stuff, and I'm joking, what you need to do is speak with one voice. You need to make sure that our elected officials, our friends, our neighbors are all aware that that Indian River Lagoon, whether you fish or not, whether you swim or not, whether you boat or not, is the economic driver of our entire ecosystem, and I mean the human ecosystem. And so I heard a story yesterday from one of our mayors about a woman in Cocoa Beach who had been trying to sell her home for quite some time. And in fact, she had a closing the day before yesterday, which became problematic, and it didn't happen because her backyard was basically loaded with dead fish. And the people who were buying took one look at that and decided not to close. This is more than just an environmental tragedy. This is going to impact people financially and beyond. And so you need to be speaking with one voice, but like I said earlier, it needs to be a respectful, gauged voice. So I'm going to give you a couple bullets. This is the economic engine of the Indian River, of the region. It is as important to places like Northrop Grumman and Harris and Florida Institute of Technology, and even what I'm running, a national estuary program. This is part of the fabric of our communities. And as long as we keep this restoration vision alive, then we will have the appetite over a year or two to keep moving towards this perfect kind of ending, which is a healthy lagoon, knowing that, you got to double down on this now. And so this is a matter of talking to your elected officials about, investment. It's about making sure you're doing the right things in your own life so you're not part of the problem. And that is very much inwardly looking. And we need to be thinking about who we are as a community. And I think this is the one opportunity out of this horrible event. I have never seen groups like this before. Even during the 2011 super bloom, we were like surprised and we were mad, but we weren't unified. This should unify us. This is not, them and us. It's not South Florida, North Florida. It's not Democrat and Republican. It's not, Orlando versus the coast. We are an engine for the entire state of Florida. And so we need to make sure that we keep on this message that it's important, that we need to, stay the course, and that if we invest those dollars, that we know that we're going to get a good return on investment. And so is it easy? No. Do I have these quick kind of things you need to do? Probably not, but right now I think the message is make sure you're talking to your elected officials in a polite and respectful and informed way and say, I am calling, to thank you for your support in the past, but we need more. I'm calling to make sure that this is important to industry. And this is a sad state of affairs, but I'm going to be honest about it. I can go to Tallahassee or Washington, D.C. with 20, 30, 40, 50 environmental firms. But those of you who are working in industry, you need to be talking to your CEOs and your presidents and saying, you know what, we need to get behind this as a corporation. That the voice is so important to make sure that we are unified. And when tourism, and I know the Tourist Development Council is talking about a resolution, the League of Cities are talking about an Indian River Lagoon-wide compact. And so we're getting there. But the key is, right now, it's important. We need a fix. We need action, and we want responsible,
And
guidance.
I agree with everything you said, but I think you have that. You have the community's attention. Just like when business folks get mad when you can't address the ROI, you have to be able to come up with those specific things. Do we want to pull the sod back from the canals? Do we want to stop fertilizing our backyards altogether all year long? Do we want to respect the fact that it's El Nino? What is it that we can talk to our neighbors about specifically?
Yes,
Because I can go to my
yes,
board
and yes.
I know, but
All those real simple things you were talking about are exactly the things. I mean,
arm me with the information that I can, when I'm on my house, like,
One at a time. One at a time, please.
I can go talk to somebody that I see dumping their lawn stuff and explain why. Because you can go up and down, like you just said, there's no fish
There's no fish dead in Indiana Lagoon or Bay, Tampa Bay, Chesapeake Bay, and we've got the same situation, same fertilizers and everything like that. From a corporate state of America that are providing you that product that we are talking about, that we want to talk about. I think my voice could carry it out. And with that being said, that is a two-part question. I would like to know your credentials. That gives you the mic in the hand. And with the given history in 2013, with Rick Scott vetoing to fund a research project to study the extreme crisis in the Lagoon, this isn't the first time that this has happened. His quote, "Not all projects demonstrate an ability to contribute to a statewide investment." Now, with your given investment, I hear that very loud, and I hear a lot of money, millions of dollars as well. Which hands is that investment going to go into? And is that actually going to look at towards the source and the cause of the problem, which is actually a question with some given different circumstances, because in 2013, we were looking at the same Okeechobee release in discharge. Go ahead, please. Advice.
I'm trying to get to all the questions there. Number one, my credential is it's not impressive. I've lived here my whole adult life. I came here in 1978 to get a master's degree. I fell in love with this community, the Lagoon. I happened to get a PhD at Florida Institute of Technology. Did my postdoc on the Indian River Lagoon with the University of Florida. Then I ran the Environmentally Endangered Lands program for Brevard County, buying conservation lands during its first years with a $55 million program. After that, I ran Hub SeaWorld Research Institute for a number of years, doing sea turtle work and large mammal work. A lot of the recovery here for dolphins were under my administrative control with Hub SeaWorld, a nonprofit, by the way. Left for a year, University of Central Florida, to help them envision their sea turtle program down in the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, but also to think about a sustainability science and technology institute. When that was in the early infancy of discussion is when the economy hit. I left that to go to industry. I worked with a company for 7 years doing water remediation research and development on Lake Jessup. So I know and understand nitrogen and phosphorus pollution and cyanobacteria actually way more as a marine biologist than I ever wanted or imagined. That company did not commercialize. It's still active, but it's at a reduced mode. And so I took almost 7 months off and went surfing. And to be honest, I stayed here because I didn't want to leave this community. I had job offers and opportunities elsewhere, but I stayed here because I love this place. So my credential is that I live here, I work here, I play here, and I love being here. And I took this job not because I wanted to work for government. And heck, I got to tell you, surfing is a lot more fun than, looking at all of you right now and saying, I'm sorry. I'm one part of the 1.7 million that created this problem, but I do feel that way. I feel a heavy weight of this burden of this job right now. But I took this job, and I'll tell you a story. I took this job because I met a woman at Florida Institute of Technology who is the first 4-star general of the Army in American history, General Ann Dunwoody. And we gave her an award, and we were chatting when she showcased her book, and she's a remarkable woman. And we were talking about the possibility of me taking this job. And she said, you should read a chapter in my book. And the chapter is about, in fact, it's titled, Don't Walk Past a Mistake. And to be honest, it kept popping up in my head, middle of the night, morning, don't walk past a mistake. So when I decided to put my name in the hat, to be perfectly honest, I thought they'd go with somebody a little younger. I would have hired somebody with a lot more energy than I've got right now. But the fact is, I felt like for my career and my experience, not because it's great experience, because it's broad experience, that I could bring something to this mission that would be helpful. So I am here to help. I'm here tonight to listen and help. The fact is, I have no easy solutions, can't fix it myself, but I represent you. I'm paid by taxpayer dollars, and so I am here to help. So what was your other question? I forgot now.
It's not worth it.
Well, look, I am not going to address that because he's not here in the room, and the fact is this is our problem. This is a local issue as much as a state issue and a federal issue. I'm not going to have this political debate with you. I'm sorry. I am not going there because it's not productive.
My name is Dan Smith. I was born here in Melbourne. I've surfed my whole life. I've surfed my whole life. I actually own a paddleboard and kayak shop on the Algal River. We haven't seen a fish kill over there. The water is actually fairly clear right now, relative to most things. So it's not that terrible over there. It all needs to be fixed. I like all your ideas. I still want to go back to the flushing. I don't know why. It sounds like dollars to me, but I don't know why we can't open those locks when we have the incoming tide today, right now. Why can't that be done today? When we have the incoming tide, let's open those locks. Let's start flushing this today.
For what it's worth, I actually know the answer why they won't do that, other than the fact that I've spent a fair amount of time in Port Canaveral, and they're unable to open the locks because it will basically shut the channel.
It's money. You just.
It is money. It is money.
It's pump. We can put pumps in there.
Right.
Put pumps in there today.
Right.
We can open those locks today.
Right.
It's money.
And
that can happen today.
When they opened after the hurricanes in 2004, they lowered it up for I think a week and a half, and then. But that is true. Honestly, truthfully, believe me, you will not hear me say anything bad about the port grubbing on some money because I'm all up in that.
You can open up the locks. I mean, he's built Dr.
Weaver.
Doctor right there. Probably good. I'd like to know the reason why. I mean, I know it's just money. We should, I think, be opening the locks today when the tide comes in, and if pumps need to be put in, pumps can be put in. Pumps can be put in, and there's a lot of money being generated at the port. Pumps should be put in to open those locks. At least to start, this is not a solution. All the solutions that you have are great, but today I think we should start moving the water.
That may be the right thing to do if the science tells us that, but I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I'm concerned about the salinity issue because if we take this hypersaline situation and we provide an environment that this particular organism likes, then what is the unintended consequences are hard to predict. So I'm nervous. Do I think we should take this off the table for discussion? No. I think it's a discussion that needs to be robust. It needs to be with guys that are as smart as Dr. Weaver. I'm a marine biologist. I'm the biologist guy. I'm thinking about the fish, the larvae, the organisms that adapt to an estuarine environment, and that when you get hypersalinity, they're under stress already. You're taking an estuarine system, not like we don't have it at the inlets. So we do have it. But I have to tell you that in the super bloom, we had a bloom down at Sebastian Inlet and just did this. So how much flushing? Is it going to make a difference? And the real question for us right now, the question you really want to have answered, I wish I had it, but I don't. Would it stop the next algal bloom, or would it stop the next fish kill? And the answer is we don't have that answer, but I can tell you if the nutrients are in the system, what we may see is something else blooming that could be even worse than what we've got. And so, yes, we should discuss it. I get it. You know, we need to be talking about that in the right venue. I can't solve that here tonight. But, you know, we'll take it under advisement. In fact, it will be discussed more than here. It's already being discussed at Port Canaveral. You know, I don't control the locks. They do.
Thank you for being here tonight, number one. It's been very informative. My name's Don McClendon. I live on the Grand Canal over here in Satellite Beach. Sunday, like many people, we awoke to this horrific stench that smelled like dead cats on the road or something. I mean, it was terrible. First thing, I mean, we were appalled, of course, and sad. But that being said, I want to address I think a neighbor of mine. I haven't met him, but he asked, what can you do tomorrow? One thing I did was call the Fish and Wildlife over in St. Petersburg. The number was in Florida Today. And they asked me to first thing he said, would take a lot of photos of all the species that you see, send them to us. I did that. I said, if there's anything else I can do, let me know. They said, well, would you be willing to get water samples? I said, sure, no problem. They said, all right, you'll get an email here in the next 30 minutes, and there will be a FedEx label on there, printed out. It will tell you how to take the samples, what you need to do on the bottles, what information they need. I took it down to FedEx there in Indian Harbor. They had those samples yesterday morning, so I took them down. So that's something everybody can do. You can call them and ask. They want samples from different areas where they can kind of map this thing. They don't have the resources, either in funds or personnel, to do this. So you can do that.
Can I jump on that and say why that matters? You have to give someone something to do in order to create buy-in. You might think that you have buy-in in this room because we're all like-minded people, but you don't in this community. So when you show up and you say, oh no, there's nothing we can do, we got to ride it out, and something's going to happen, it's going to take long term, you have to give something to somebody to do, even if it's superficial, just to create.
I don't think that's superficial, but yeah, you can do it. And so I'd like to just, I've got kind of a two-pronged deal for your doctor. Is Dr. Weaver? Is Doctor? Yeah. I've read, Dr. Weaver, I've read your articles, your papers on the Weir system. I've always been intrigued by that. That's a static system, so to speak, as far as the infrastructure. Although it could be constructed as an adjustable weir, that would hopefully mediate some of his concerns as far as salinity. If it didn't work, raise the weir, just stop it.
We actually are proposing a gated system that because you do have to have a managed approach to this, and you have to be able to control that. And what if, heaven forbid, there was a spill of one of the fuel tankers offloading up a port? You've got to close that system off so that doesn't come into the lagoon.
Yeah, and that's not rocket science. I mean, it's done all over the world, these adjustable dams and weirs. So in that system, if you look at it, is fairly inexpensive compared to some of the inlet type infrastructures that you were talking about. The other thing that I've read quite a bit about is we made some mistakes in building the causeways. Those causeways are earthen. Instead of putting an elevated causeway bridge, allowing what little bit of natural flow there is in the lagoon system to occur, we have totally choked that lagoon system off. We've got 518, 528, 520, O'Galley, 192. So, there's all these choke points. So, those were built by the state. So somebody over here said, well, is this local money or state money? Well, I'd say, hey, state, this is hurting us all. Let's raise those causeways. And I mean, yeah, that's a big ticket item. Those are things to look at. Thank you very much.
No, and thanks for your effort there. I'm going to go back. She's been holding her hand up a long time. Robert, do you want to jump in this just to put a...
While he's walking, I'll just say that I got a message from Brevard County this afternoon. Keep Brevard Beautiful is giving out gloves, bags, and grabbers for people to go and help collect the dead fish out of the causeways and, out of the canals. So that's something else that folks can do is help get them, get them out. They've staged dumpsters around the county. So that's another thing you folks could do. Just contact Keep Brevard Beautiful.
You actually just read my mind. That was actually, I don't need a microphone. I can shout to the end. That's okay, I'm good. Sharon Nolan, just a resident here, and that was actually my question, is we've got all these things floating in the water. I live on the canal, and do you want us to collect and put them in trash bags? What
Does it help to take them out of the water?
Or when they decay, doesn't it just add to the muck and...
I'm going to tell you my science opinion, but there is varying opinions on this one going around. I had hoped I'd have some information specific to this, and I didn't. But I believe we need to get as many of those fish out of the water as possible. What happens is these fish decompose, and each one of those, depending on how big they are, is a number of nitrogen units and a number of phosphorus units. And so basically what happens as that large biomass decomposes and then becomes the new muck, we will have continued oxygen depletion because of that decomposition process. You will have continued odor, which is going to get way worse than better, especially if we get into warmer temperatures and no wind. And you are going to wind up taking what would be a particulate form of those nutrients, and as it breaks down, it is going to become a soluble, usable form of nutrients that may just cycle back in to fuel another bloom. And so, in my mind, what we ought to be doing is, as fast as possible, picking up the damage, and getting it handled as fast as possible. Talk to the county. The county is organizing. This is really important. You cannot, what we learned at the BP oil spill and in many of these crises is that when this is disorganized, number one, people get hurt. And also people do things that, might not be in their personal best interest or the best interest, and so it's got to be organized. The NEP, I have a staff of two. We're not organizing this. This is not something we're capable of doing. I have been told that the health department, the water management district, Florida Fish and Wildlife, Brevard County, Keep Brevard Beautiful had a meeting today, and that they're going to be releasing information about how to help, who to see. So I would just watch for that, call the county, find out where the organization sites are. What you don't want to do, and this is really important, is just, get 2 or 3 bushels of dead fish, drag them up on a shoreline, pile them and walk, or leave them in garbage bags for raccoons and other critters. I mean, we need to have a very organized disposal process. The last I heard was the county was putting dumpsters out. There was some question about whether it was on public land only by the parks or if they were going to clean behind the private houses. I don't have any information, but that is, do you have information? Good. Thank you. Here, I'll take the mic. This is why we have these civic forums. There's a lot of good brain power in here.
I've been on the phone for days with everybody from senators, everything, just for information, to get information. This isn't familiar to me, these problems. So, because first everybody was yelling, oh, it's from Lake Okeechobee and all this stuff. I'm like, what? So now that, and coming to these meetings, this is knowledge, which we all need. And I spoke with Brevard County Park and Recreation yesterday, and the day before, and they finally call, and everybody calls you back. Everybody's really great. Even the senator's assistant calls me every day to give me an update. But the powers that be at the county decided they were only going to clean up the county parks. They were not going to do anything with private or residential properties, and that they're going to allow nature to take its course. And I felt that wasn't right, and then all of a sudden I said, well, what's going to happen when people start taking the fish from their yard and dumping it on county property, so you guys will dispose of it, because you know that's going to happen, you know?
Remember, you heard this here.
Well, no, and the funny thing is, I asked her yesterday, and then today online, we're putting containers out for you to dump your fish in. So, I mean, I think everybody's really trying to find the solution, but I know as of right now, there is no plan to help the residents that they feel that they should just let nature take its course.
And if I
let the
could
fish
add
sink to the
that,
bottom.
St. John's is actually cleaning
I
up.
know, they don't have the funds. That's what
St. John's is cleaning the Grand Canal right now, so they are pulling up some of the fish. In Cocoa Beach, they're doing the same thing. So they've kind of changed a little bit. They had to speak with Fish and Wildlife, because Fish and Wildlife wants you to leave the fish alone, because the fish will sink. But they have basically agreed with St. John's to allow them to collect them in a certain way with hand nets and things like that, and dispose of them in a certain way. So that is going on right now. So St. John's actually called our city to find out where we would like them to concentrate on. So they are picking up some of the fish in the canals right now.
And those of you who have been on, this is a massive job. We're never going to get it all. And the debate that I heard today was, how much is this going to matter over the long haul, when it comes to the cycling? But it does give people a feeling of action, and so keep in tune, and the county is kind of on point, St. John's on point, and I think a number of other agencies, and it's evolving, this one. We've had fish kills before, but we've never had quite anything quite like this that I remember.
Thank you.
You've been waiting a long time.
I have. Well, I thought of about 5 extra questions in the meantime, so no, I promise I'll keep it short. My name's Amy. I'm a conservation coordinator at Brevard Zoo, and just before I forget, wanted to update on that information. Just late this afternoon, KBB did send out some information that they are doing a cleanup. I believe the meeting location is Pineda. So if you want to contact them in the morning, they're actually also looking for boat support, so that would definitely be something. Yes, volunteers, I believe they'll provide information. Yeah, correct. So I would recommend contacting them in the morning. No, not at all. But I think that brought up a really good point, which was my original question, kind of similar lines as Alex, and that is, as a conservation coordinator at the zoo, we have a really great opportunity to educate people, and we have lots of people coming to us with questions, which we love to answer. But there is a lot of misinformation out there, and we try our best to answer all of those questions as best that we can. But from this room tonight, you can see how powerful social media is. We all learned about this on Facebook, and it's a little bit like whack-a-mole out there on Facebook, trying to clear up the misinformation and to get the correct information to the right people. It's just constant trying to update that. And I love the idea of this one voice, and it is so needed. And so I'd hope that is obviously going to be your role. And I know with the restructuring of the council that you are going to be hiring a communications person. So just wanted to sort of find out what the plan is.
Sounds like an application.
No, not at all. No, I just think it is a very important role, and that as individuals and also organizations throughout the lagoon that do conservation work, that we are really looking to direct people to one person, to one overarching entity that can provide all of this information in one place, so that rather than having to go to 14 different organizations, that we come to you, and that you are sort of the warehouse of all this information that we can disseminate to the public. And if you can just talk a little bit about what the plan is for that, that would be.
The lady back there wants to know what KBB is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Keep Brevard Beautiful. So Keep Brevard, I'm sorry. Acronyms, they're terrible. Yes, Keep Brevard Beautiful will be organizing the cleanup.
The question, what's our role? We hope that we evolve into exactly that we become, number one, trusted by you, and we have to earn that trust. We don't have it right now, and I get that. That number one, we are responsive to you, and I've been doing my best. Remember, we have two people on staff, me and one other person, for 5 counties, and for this entire lagoon, and we're only going to have one more. So we're going to operate this as lean as we possibly can, which makes it even more important that we are working closely with our partners at the zoo, at KBB, at Marine Resources Council. We have a lot of partners, both old and new. Here's the important thing, though, and I think this is a key success point for national estuary programs. We are not regulatory. We have no authority. We can't tell you what to do, what not to do. Our job is to convene exactly what we're doing right now. In the last 4 days, I don't know how many interviews I've given, but it's been a lot. And I've had dozens, if not 100 phone calls, and that's part of our job. But I can't speak on behalf of even the agencies that I represent, that are our partners, because they speak for themselves. And so what I can only tell you as the executive director is what the NEP can and will do, and it's this. We give you the best information we have. When you send us out with a question we can't answer, we try to get you with the right people. But where we move the needle in ways that no other entity can, and where the most success has been in estuaries, has been inside national estuary programs, because they are consensus-driven, because each and every one of you who may not be a PhD marine biologist has the same equal voice as somebody from industry, somebody from an agency, somebody with a PhD. It is convening a safe and open place for dialogue that is productive, science-based, fact-based, and action-based. So I'm going to give you guys something that I'm thinking about. This is down the line, but it's important, and it's important to Brevard Zoo. How many of you have done oyster mat restoration? A lot. Well, restoring oysters right now is difficult because it's not the time that you would put mats out because the water quality is really sketchy. But one of the things I've been doing, because we are in flux, we're at the brand new stage of this, I'm thinking beyond this crisis to what our needs are. And this is just a thought, but I believe that we are going to be in huge need of oyster shell when we get out of this. We're going to probably be in huge need, and I believe this, and it's not something, I was dumb, and not on a lot of things, but on this one, I never thought that seagrass replanting was kind of a solution, because they've always been hard to replant. And after 2011, I watched how slow this recruitment is, and where we are right now, I think we ought to be thinking about getting somebody. I know Harbor Branch is doing some of the private sector, so we've got seed stock of seagrasses to replant seagrasses. I got a funny feeling that we may be in the same spot as Texas. Texas did massive redfish restocking, which reconditioned what is now a really excellent recreational fishery. We need to be thinking about this restoration, not just today, but over the next number of years, so we are not leaving gaps in our strategy for success. So you ask what you can do tomorrow? You can go over to Brevard Zoo and volunteer. You can go to Marine Resources and volunteer. You can take kids out on the Lagoon in those volunteer and engage the next generation who's going to need to know about the Lagoon. There is a good friend of mine that was the founder of the Nature Conservancy in Florida, became the Audubon president. His name was John Flicker, and he actually was one of the architects of Preservation 2000. And he said, people, and you are those people who have experienced nature are like people who experience art. So the person who's going to spend $10 million on a piece of art, they didn't just walk in an art gallery and go, oh, I think I'll spend $10 million on a Van Gogh. First they experience art. Then they begin to appreciate art with the knowledge that they gain in understanding art. And the more knowledge they gain, they seek out expanded experiences in the environment of art. And those expanded experiences lead to value and then investment. And one of the biggest risks we have right now, the biggest risk, you want to ask me what you should do right now, is don't lose hope. I have heard a dozen people tell me today, on the phone, at lunch, at another meeting I was at, I think I'm just selling my boat, I'm selling the house, and I'm moving. And you know what? I get it. I think only 2 or 3 of them would probably, just honestly reflecting what they might do, they're frustrated. We need to make sure that we don't take our eye off the prize and fall into this, hand-wringing, we can't do anything, mode. We need to be out there actively engaged. If there's volunteer efforts, let's go volunteer. If there are things you can do in your yard, do that. But do something. Don't be complacent and sit back and do nothing and say, somebody else is going to solve this problem for me, because this problem is our problem. This responsibility is our responsibility. But the opportunity is ours as well. And we shouldn't, in a negative way, lose the opportunity to actually wind up with a more robust, healthy, and resilient system. And I think we can get there in a number of years. It's not going to be perfect in 5, but I think we will see progress in 2 or 3 if we just invest in the stuff we know what to do and then make sure it gets done. So your message really needs to be, we're willing to invest time, we're willing to invest our money, we're willing to invest our votes, we're willing to get engaged. This is important to us as a community, and just don't lose that single message that, this is part of visioning a future for the lagoon and a future for our society. And this God, the hand-wringing makes me nervous, because it's easy to walk away and say, oh, this is too hard. And we're not that kind of people.
Hi, my name is Robert. I moved back down here about 9-10 months ago, avid kayak fisherman.
From where?
Military, all over Europe, bad places. I guess a 2-part thing. You wanted to organize people. Alex, I don't know if you did it, but somebody's putting together a rally Saturday at 2 to 6.
Where is that, Alex?
Corner of A1 and platform.
So that's one thing.
There you go.
Secondly, you were saying it's a national estuary, and so I wanted to, are we getting federal assistance due to that?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They are the major contributor to the NEP.
Okay.
So we get $600,000 from the EPA, and then the next highest are the 2 water management districts at $500,000 apiece. And then the counties are in at $50,000 for Volusia, Brevard. Indian River has 3 cities representing. It's Fellsmere, Vero Beach, City of Sebastian. Total is $2.1 million for the National Estuary Program for Indian River Lagoon, and I can tell you that we are probably one of the more healthy financial ones. There's a lot of them that run just on $600,000, and that's it. And is that enough of an investment for a National Estuary Program? I think not. But that is, getting a lift for that in Congress is something we're working on, but it's going to take a while.
I'm sorry, I know you probably didn't want to give me this mic like the whole time that I was here, but I just want to say that I really, really respect what you do. My best friend Mallory Morgan is a marine biologist, and she's extremely passionate about what she does. And when you say that we have the funding from the federal level, someone sent me a link to the recent state budget bill that was passed. Every single project that you mentioned was line vetoed. I mean, they didn't fund it. They didn't give us the money for it, and it's because it's like they're ignoring us, or it may be because the money's being used somewhere else. So I think that, you say volunteering. I am a grassroots activist. Volunteering is where it's at. Of course, spend your time going to the Brevard Zoo and volunteering. And before I leave here today, I just want to say, vote, do your research. Our legislators, they decide what funding we get, and we didn't get the funding we needed as Brevard County or as our estuaries. We didn't get it, and it's not Rick Scott, and it's not just one person. It's because we didn't vote correctly, and our legislators don't represent us. That's all I have to say.
My name's Chris Bantha. I live in Indian Harbor Beach. I'm a boat owner, a recreational fisherman. I do not fish the river. I fish the ocean. However, it does impact me because of the forage fish that I cannot find anymore, that they're all floating around out there. I've heard a lot of people complain, pointing fingers at politicians, things like that. My thought on it is it starts in your backyard. And And the reason I say that is I got a next door neighbor. Now, I don't have sprinklers in my yard. I've got somebody that mows my yard. I don't fertilize my yard. My yard is pretty much weeds. If it was up to me, it would just be gravel. However, my next door neighbor, for example, no rain sensors on your sprinkler heads. Now, if I park my boat in my yard for more than 24 hours, I got code enforcement knocking on my door saying you have to get your boat out of your yard or you're going to get fined. Now, they'll drive by her house when it's raining and see her sprinklers on. That's something I think that local government can change. Code enforcement goes by somebody's house, you knock on their door, you get one warning. The next time they drive by there and it's raining and your sprinklers are on, you get fined. It's simple as that. And that is not very, it's not very costly thing to do. The other thing is I'm currently now doing a lot of research on oyster restoration. Not, of course, anybody that fishes. You plant an oyster bed on the riverbed, and the muck covers it. They're dead in a year. My idea is what they call oyster nets that surround your pylons on each and every dock. If you're a homeowner, you picture this. Say you're a homeowner, you have a dock. That dock has 20 pylons. If you put just 5 bags on 5 of those pylons, one oyster filters 50 gallons of water a day, if I'm correct. If you can get enough people to do that for a nonprofit, it would clean itself up. I'm not saying to get rid of the algae bloom. We would still have to deal with the muck. However, I think you would have a viable, and I'm going to continue doing my research on it. But my question for the council is this. Would you, looking for the word, not help, not fund, but would you not interfere with nonprofits doing this?
We have funded numerous oyster restoration projects. We don't do the projects. We give money to Brevard Zoo, Marine Resources Council. I'm an invertebrate zoologist, my first degree. Never, overestimate the power of one of those little bivalves. I mean, they need to be in the system. They filter really well. Clams are the other story. We don't know as much about how that restocking will work. But there are people doing that pylon work right now, and you're going to hear about a project.
Hey, Dwayne,
Thank you.
before you start on that,
Yes.
can we address the funding from the state this session? I have to say that because I think from our perspective, from the cities and the county who go and ask for this money every year, we did pretty good this session. I mean, we received about $25 million for demucking, and this is the 3rd year in a row that we've received money like that. So from a state perspective, I think we did pretty well. What we are weak on, in my opinion, is the local funding. So when we talk about sewer discharges and leaky pipes, that's your sewer utility, and to fix that is your sewer rates. And when we talk about wanting to do stormwater projects and actually adding to the demucking, those are all funding sources that have to come locally. And right now, the only voice at the county commission level is don't increase my taxes. So if we want to get serious about bigger projects like this that take a lot of money to do, that's something we all are going to have to address and face, is we do need other funding revenue sources here locally, not just at the state level.
Yeah, and that's part of I think the council is very aware of that and appreciates that. And in fact, most of our dollars will be trying to fund those local projects. But 2.1 doesn't stretch very far in, 5 counties. And so we're looking at ways to increase our own revenue through federal and state. And we have some ideas there. There are some interesting things I'm looking into now, including nutrient credit trading banking to see if there's some policy opportunities that would allow for kind of funding generation in projects. But you're absolutely right. We did really well. In fact, I had heard from a very reliable source that the last 3 years funding for the Indian River Lagoon was in that 75 million range, and so we did much better than a lot of local governments. It doesn't mean that some good projects didn't, get through the veto pen. That's the nature of the process, and so that is the way it works. So not everything gets funded. You got to be back. You got to be persistent. You have had the mic really a long time. Give me time to. I'll get back to you, but
I would like to hear him talk about the oyster program.
yeah, that's right. Because we're doing those piling jobs right now. It's interesting.
I'll be fairly brief, and I'll talk to you offline anytime you're ready. We started a project with the Indian River Lagoon Research Institute at FIT. We partnered with Indian Harbor Montessori and the Girl Scout troops. We call it the Living Dock. What we're doing is we've been wrapping pilings with oyster mats. It started out as a research project. The city of Satellite Beach was very gracious and let us use the docks over at Sampson's Island. We were just out there last week putting out an array of mats and bags around the pilings there. We're continuing the research into the appropriate shell density and placement of the mats on the pilings. We've been partnering now with Friends of the Spoil Islands in St. Lucie County. We've even been talking with folks up at the Hudson River Foundation. So I'm happy to talk with you about that. We're calling this the Living Dock Project, and that is we're going full steam with that. Anyone that wants to help out with that, we'll use your dock too.
And the other side of that, we're all over the United States. We're working on what's called living shorelines. So instead of doing bulkheads, there's a lot of evidence now that you can actually do structural arrangements around bulkheads where you're using oysters. I mean, even barnacles. Barnacles don't get a very big, a big look. But in fact, barnacles filter on a per weight basis a huge amount of particulate. But each of those critters gets impacted differently by these algae. So right now, you couldn't set clams. And if you did set oysters, it'll depend on where you set. Brevard Zoo and the partners have been doing it for a long time. The schools, they know kind of when and where you're going to get good survival rates. You don't want to put them where you know they're not going to survive. But oysters are pretty hardy, and they will make it through a boom like this if it's not extensive and long-lasting.
I'm not going to stand up because I have a bad hip. I've lived in Brevard County since 1972. Was the founder of Brevard Zoo. Love this place. My children and grandchildren come here and love this place. So there's a lot of interest in sustainability right now and protecting the environment right now. And everything Dwayne has said, we have to remember the big picture. This is a multi-pronged situation here, and I just encourage everyone not to buy into some of the stuff I've seen running around the internet already. They're looking for a smoking gun. They want to point a finger, at FPL's warm water, or the manatee's excretion, etc., or the port. But this is like I said, multi-pronged. It's complex. But if we all stand together, we can make a difference.
Well said.
Hi there, Brad Evers, fellow Florida Tech alum with 2 degrees from there. I came down from St. Augustine, love the water, just bought a house on it, and do not plan to move away anytime soon. My question is, nutrient removal is the most directly effective Band-Aid. I draw parallels to the saltwater aquarium industry, where you have foam fractionization with skimmers, or you could use macroalgae to suck up excess nitrates, nitrites, and sulfites, as well as phosphates. So is there any active or passive filtration technology besides oyster mats that Florida Tech's looking into?
Yeah, actually, Florida Tech has a professor who's looking at a technology that remediates nutrients. I just left a company that had great success in Lake Jessup with both particulate, nutrient. There's a bit of a push right now. It's a general distrust of anything that is technological, because we have a propensity to want to do this naturally. And so when you get a private company in for profit that has a technological solution, I'll be honest, it simply isn't easy. It's not easy to get permits. It's not easy to get support. But the fact is that technology is critically needed. Where technology won't help us is when we're discharging at like 4.8 billion gallons a day down, Caloosahatchee or St. Lucie. There isn't any technology even that I can envision that would be able to take that volume and that velocity and do any kind of nutrient removal. You got to slow it down. So one of the things that's being modeled down in South Florida, and it's a model for here, and let's use just an example here. One of our big dischargers, Crane Creek. Crane Creek, when it floods big, and you get this giant pulse. Crane Creek's been dredged a couple times. The first time we actually dredged it out in the mouth, and then the realization, you get better as you do this, is that, well, maybe we should have started upstream first, because, it was immediately, within a year or two, all that muck came back down and refilled the mouth. So we'll get better at the management process and technologies. But imagine this, and we have a good example in Palm Bay, and I mentioned it earlier, the Wheeler Stormwater Park. Imagine if, as part of our land acquisition big picture, the vision for the future, that we have stormwater parks associated with all of our major tributaries. Those stormwater parks have large reservoirs. Those large reservoirs are managed with all sorts of possible technologies, but also it becomes a living laboratory for Florida Tech and UCF and guys like you going through grad school when you did to test new ideas. And you have birders out there. The Wheeler Stormwater Park is, at least locally, we have a bunch of these, a good example of how you can do green infrastructure, clean water, wind up with more water to use for irrigation during drought, and wind up with a clean, no mucks, delivery. And technology's got to be part of that. And one of the cool ones I saw there is they actually, denitrification is a bacterial process that takes nitrogen, turns it into nitrogen gas, basically. So ammonia, nitrate, nitrogen gas, and it goes in the atmosphere. They actually have a system in the swales of the reservoir that holds the water that is a denitrification swale. And they're testing the efficacy of that. So yeah, we've got a lot to learn, but think about the opportunities of the process and the technology. So yeah, I've probably talked to 10 technology firms in the last 2 days. The one I liked was the hydrogen peroxide guy. He wanted to dump hydrogen peroxide from a plane because he thought that would kill all the algae. And I'm thinking, God, hydrogen peroxide, 156 miles, that's a lot of planes.
Hi, my name's Laura Roth. I was actually wondering, could we ban fertilizers throughout the state of Florida? If it's a big problem, because we do have a lot of snowbirds that do come down here and they are not well informed of this area and they don't understand what's going on. Is there some sense that we could ban that so that way they understand as well? Or at least teach them. Yeah, something.
Yes, you could ban, but here's the reality. If you put fertilizer down appropriately and you know what you're doing, fertilizer's not a problem. You don't want it. And in agriculture gets a bad riff on this. Everybody assumes that agriculture is dropping fertilizer without any consideration. Agriculture actually, when you have applicators on large agricultural, those guys are all licensed. Those guys are trained. They don't want to drop a pound of phosphorus more than they have to because it costs them a lot of money, and phosphorus is really expensive. So yeah, we could ban it, but the fact is it's better to educate, and so we over-fertilize a lot in this state. I can tell you, because I watch my neighbors, we probably spray things like Roundup way more than we should and we need to. Somebody earlier said, what do you do at home? Make a choice. I don't fertilize my lawn. I was told back in the day I could have a beautiful Florida lawn without fertilizer. it turned out not to be really true. My neighbors probably hate it, but I also don't have to water it anymore because there's no lawn to really water. And so when I'm out there, but there's a secondary impact to that I actually have a lot of what I would call soft sediment and soil because I don't have grass. And so I worry about that sediment load to that corner because I don't have the vegetation buffers. And so the way we look at landscaping needs to change in Florida. The perfect green lawn, yeah, we need to go to native plants, xeriscaping, smart landscaping, cheap landscaping, less water use. All of that's an individual choice. And you all have the power to make good choices on your home and what you do on a day-to-day. Where did he left already?
This board is actually talking about creating a program to bring the UF Ag Center to our city to do those programs to show our residents how to do those lawns, the native landscaping lawns and things like that. So that has been a priority of this board since they started, about 5 months ago.
And there's great programs. Be Floridian is a great program. So, I mean, you can go online, and I like those that, allow you to make good choices, but you make right choices. I was looking back to see if Dylan was still here. He sent me a video by Facebook, I don't know, it was about a month ago, that for me was indicative that we're not doing a very good job. And somebody had taken, it was obvious, it was a big truckload of garbage. I believe that was over on Pineda Causeway. Hey, Frank, was that Pineda? Yeah, I mean, there was a bed. There were garbage cans. I mean, and I remember when that was common. When I was running the Endangered Lands Program, I've walked most of this county, and actually a whole lot of Florida during those 8 or 10 years, and we saw garbage everywhere, even in near wilderness areas. And then over the last 20 years, it looks like litter has we have done a good job of educating. And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing more litter along the lagoon. I don't know if, Frank, you're seeing this when you're boating. And I have a sneaking suspicion, not scientific, just a gut, that when we kind of are out there saying the lagoon is dying, the lagoon is in bad shape, the water quality is terrible, then all of a sudden somebody makes this crazy mental jump that, well, if it's dying, it's okay for me to take my flatbed or my car with a truckload of garbage bags and just go dump it because it has no value. And so this constant need to educate is important, but that video was amazingly powerful for me. And he just loaded one today. He is a slack line. It's probably better he's not here. That'd be embarrassing if he's outside. All right. Well, you can give him applause when he comes in. You say, Dwayne gave a big pitch. He just did a video that is a really good video about the core values of the Indian River Lagoon. And he's a slack liner. And I don't know if you know what that is. It's walking a balance a line. And he's really good at it. And he's really passionate. And he has a talent, not just to tell a story, but to tell a personal story that links to the environment. Those are the things that really matter. Those personal stories are probably a heck of a lot more important than you guys listening to a PhD all night. Is that this is about people, it's about community, and yes, you got some information, but you need to be talking to your neighbors, talking to your kids, talking to your grandkids, talking about the people who come down from New York and New Jersey who just don't understand Florida, that this is different. This place is different, we are different. And we need to be on that message constantly. You mentioned University of Florida. They are awesome. Dr. Marty Main at UF runs the Florida Master Naturalist Program. He's a good buddy of mine, and I remember when he first created that, and I actually helped him with the first coastal module. He has certified over 10,000 Florida Master Naturalists who now are teaching. And so it's about spreading the word. And if you spread the word right, you can form an army, just starting with one. And there's examples all over of good examples of that. So if you want to do something, Florida Master Naturalists, you get certified, you get some cool patches, but you learn a lot of neat stuff and get really dirty in the process.
Hey, Dr. DeFries, let's have this be our last question.
Oh, I was just going to, just to to springboard off of that, we actually have the Space Coast Regional Chapter of the Florida Master Naturalist Program we just formed this year. We're working on getting scholarships available so that if you are interested and you're a grad student, but you want to get out there, we're going to make it available to you guys. So we're on Facebook. We're in with the IFAS office. Brevard County, the IFAS office is a remarkable resource as well. They have My Brevard Yard that gives you all the resources. You can walk away with a rain barrel and the kit to do it. You can learn about be a sustainable Floridian. There's another course for that as well. So if you check out on the UF IFAS website, the Brevard IFAS, IFAS, our link for the Space Coast Master Naturalist Program is there as well. So there's a lot of resources and there's a lot of education. There's a lot of passion. So let's get all that channeled in the right direction, and thank you so much for being here.
I'm going to wrap just by thanking you all for hanging in here. It was a long night, but I appreciate personally your time, your advice, your guidance, your concerns. I've listened. We'll make sure we try to do the best we can to address your needs and serve you. And also thank you, the City of Satellite Beach. I mean, it's amazing that you've opened this forum for discussion. Dylan, I tried to get you a standing ovation, but they forgot. The video is amazing. So go check out his website and go online. But thank you very much. I think it was very productive tonight.
Thank you. I'd like to have everybody take a break for about 5-10 minutes, and then we'll come back. We got a couple more, and I would like to say some of the stuff people are asking about, like what can we do? You can stay in touch with this board, the Sustainability Board, and people ask, hey, what can we do as individuals and as homeowners? Everybody on this board right here is a volunteer and came to this board in that same way with that same type of question. How can I help? What can I do to get involved in the City of Satellite Beach and help with some of these environmental issues that we have? And that's how this board happens. And if you keep track of what we're doing, you're going to see things that we're going to invite you to volunteer in and invite you to participate in that are going to address very directly many of the things that I've heard people bring up tonight. So keep your eyes on our Facebook page.
On website, we're on the web, all of their agendas, and this meeting, actually, we recorded this meeting, so you can go to our website if you'd like to see his presentation again, and that's on, and it's connected to YouTube, because we're not really that high-tech here. So we record it and then put it on YouTube, but you can get to it from our website. All of their agendas and everything like that are on the website, too. Okay.
Well, that's what I was saying, because it's exactly what they were asking for, though. But ask Frank if it's a good idea, because he's seen it already.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because we can just play it right now, and everyone's already thinking it doesn't even matter. But it's just kind of disappointing, because when you guys see it, you'll see how it's actually everything.
Is there anything like we dealt with? We'll reconvene now, and I would, just based on
Entertain a motion
the
to-
lateness of the hour, I'd entertain a motion to table all of the other items on the agenda to our next meeting.
So moved.
Dr. Fergus moves.
Second, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Josh,
Second.
you too.
I think,
You can second.
seconded. Somebody say it, let's go, please.
Mr. Pauls seconded the motion.
Eugene Matthews.
Yes.
Mindy Gibson.
Yes.
Josh Pond.
Yes.
John Fergus.
Yes.
Jeff Chastain.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so I'm going to have her just send out the link, and you guys can go ahead and watch while you eat dinner or something.
Yeah. Freaking one. I want to see it.